So we've been over the supine position. Let's start to understand the seated position. We'll try to talk about what the seated player's goals are and sort of how we should approach it, right? So when we approached supine, like I said, Tyler, the supine player, he's in a low risk position. I can pass, but for me to go straight to a position where I'm very close to a submission straight away, very low risk for Tyler. And in terms of range, we can keep our range at a safe range, a range where we can touch them, but they can't touch you. In terms of seated, what we have here is Tyler is in a riskier position. It is a riskier position because I can actually, at a faster rate, get closer to a submission or an advantageous position. A good example would be if I were to close the distance, we can go straight to the front head. We can go straight to Kimura traps. So in a sense, he's safer in a supine position, but it's easier for us to game that position. When he plays seated, he is at more risk, but he's also has more options. And it is an active guard as well as a reactive guard. If Tyler's flat on his back here, really, his only choice is to wait for me to engage. If he's seated and I'm out of range, he can chase me down and he can engage me. He can force the action. But the way we need to approach this guard, we need to approach it at a mid-range, right? So we need to be close enough that there's some mutual engagement. Because again, no one wants to just run away, whether it's training or competition. Well, actually, some opponents will try to run away, right? But visually, we don't like that in terms of the scoring system. If guys consistently back away, generally speaking, they're going to lose the decision in case they can score something big in that position, right? But in terms of approaching seated, I want to be at a mid-range. Where Tyler does, basically, he could reach my leg. Whether that would be a smart decision or not depends on how he plays the position right. But again, I don't want to be trying to keep long range because if he follows me, I look like I'm stalling. I look like basically I am going to lose the match, right? So we need to be at a mid-range here. And I really want to match head height to some extent. And I want to try to cover the hands here, right? If I'm covering Tyler's hands, I'm winning the hand fight here. If he's covering my hands, he can control, he can attack, he can push it out the way and grab my leg. He has many more options here. So head to head, just like in wrestling, it's hard for Tyler to shoot a takedown here. If I adopt poor posture, even in the mid-range, easy access to the leg. So when we cover the hands here and we're at a mid-range, we have options, right? Because I can start doing things like pushing down. I can start doing things like lift his legs. I can even start doing things like control the ankle and start cutting angles here. So we want to be close enough to engage him, but we don't want to be so close. If I'm too close here, Tyler's got shin on shin. Now he's got his attacks and my options are more limited. So we want to approach this position at a mid-range. The battle from this position is basically a battle for inside position, right? So basically, the way I've seen it historically is that the meta of the sport, based on the DDS for quite a while, was an aggressive guard like this. And what the bottom player would be looking for would be some form of inside position, such as shin on shin. And from there, they would be able to engage the legs and attack the legs. And the counter to that was the passer wanted to take inside position of his own. Because here, again, dangerous for Tyler. Here I've got Kimura traps, front heads, and snaps. And then I would say particular people inspired, they didn't want to play this meta, so they figured they'd play supine and concede inside position. Because guys would approach a supine guard like this, thinking if I'm inside, I'm safe from leg attacks. This was proved incorrect when Lachlan Giles had his ADCC run and he found a way to engage the legs from this outside style entries here, such as K-guard, right? So this is a good example of how the game can change. What's so effective at one point and what we believe in so strictly at one point, especially in regards to leg locks, can quickly change. And that is basically, seated was seen as the most superior position to engage leg attacks, looking for inside position, until someone proves those theories incorrect and the game had to change, right? But that doesn't mean people still don't play this guard, because as I showed earlier, in approaching the supine position, is that supine, like anything in jiu-jitsu, has its limitations and it has ways to exploit the position. Supine is reactive. It relies on an opponent engaging the guard. And that's part of the beauty in what Lachlan Giles did. Lachlan Giles, being a little guy, 77, fighting 3 giant monsters. Of course, if Giles lays flat, the guy's going to go, I'm going to smash this little guy, expecting that they might have even been thinking about it on this intellectual sort of level, that if they're inside position, they're kind of safe from leg attacks, right? But then Giles used a unique outside style entry to still attack the legs. And the game changed at that point. And then basically a lot of people were mimicking that style. And then I think the Rotolos came onto the scene and demonstrated highly effective outside style passing to north-south. And now guys kind of play between both positions. They sort of see it as a whole. They say, oh, there's strengths to seated and there's strengths to supine, right? They're all just a tool to use against certain style opponents, but a highly adaptable training partner or opponent should be able to exploit both supine and seated. And as we've seen previous, again, supine being reactive, we can keep that safe distance and we can punish them for the position they've adopted. There are ways to punish that position. There are ways to punish seated too. And one of the best ways to punish seated is to approach it in a safe way, hand fight, and try to return them to the position they don't want to be in, supine. And when guys, if Tyler lays flat on his back and he wants to sit up, he has to extend his legs and reach to gain momentum. If Tyler's flat on his back in supine, his elbow's tight to his body, his knees are tight, there's no space in the hip pocket, there's no space for underhooks, there's no vulnerability there. If Tyler's seated and he keeps good posture, keeps his elbows tight here, there's still very little opportunity. But you'll see as he goes from supine to seated, and he has to really extend, because sometimes he's under resistance here. If you go back, typically speaking, their legs and their arms will reach up. And you can see we have opportunity in them returning. So that's sort of the methodology that we're going to approach this position. But again, it's not to say that sometimes if we do put someone in from seated to supine, them knowing the dangers of transitioning between those periods, those sort of periods of bottom position, might decide to just play supine. So we have to be ready for everything. We have to be, how do we approach this guard safely? How do we approach it differently to supine? How do we return them to supine? And also, well, obviously we're going to cover in the third section, is how do we approach the guy that just wants to get up, that's had enough? And really, any fatigued grappler, or basically broadly, a lot of MMA fighters, wrestlers, just want to get up. So this is basically really attacking these 3 positions. But again, we should loosely know what this guy's goals are. What can he do from seated? So I would say one of the latest sort of, again, metas in grappling is wrestling up. So if I'm out of position, Tyler can easily wrestle up. What else can he do? He can do the standard approach that was, again, very popular for a while, shin on shin and into ashiguramis and leg locks, right? So this would be one of his primary goals from here. And I would say those are the 2 best things he can do from here. He can get inside position and take an ashi, or he can wrestle up. But that's not to say there's not other things, right? So he could attack an Imanari style entry from here. He could start to roll through. So we have to be ready for the unexpected. But again, good posture, good hand fighting negates these risks, and good distance control. So don't be so far away we can't touch him. We want to be in a mutual area, but we also want to be looking to cover the hands, looking for opportunities to try to return them to those positions. We're going to talk about that next. Basically, what are the 3 best ways we can return them to supine, and then we're going to cover the key passes that arise as they try to return to seated. We've approached the seated position and we're looking for some ways to return them to supine. So there are basically a few key ways to do it, right? Again, some of these are gonna be very simple. This will be pretty straightforward, but it's in how we do it, right? So we scoot back a bit. So obviously, again, we just need to make sure we're doing everything correct. We're covering the hands, and we're trying to match head height, right? So obviously, we're trying to mitigate them reaching by keeping their hands covered, doing some Wing Chun here, Tyler's specialty. And we also want to match head height so they can't shoot. Again, we're too high, they're coming in. Yeah, these are going to be simple. This isn't groundbreaking stuff, right? One great way to do it is just push the hips. And obviously, if we wanted to keep them there, we could look to control the legs. So again, matching head height, doing some Wing Chun until it's time to push. Another way is matching head height. If we can control the legs. Again, if you notice, I don't just lift the legs, I try to pull. When we pull, we really force them to hit those shoulders. And obviously those are so obvious. A white belt would probably recognize, oh, how do we get them on their back? Pull the legs, push the shoulders. It's not groundbreaking stuff. But there are some other ways to do it as well, right? If I can create a sharp angle on Tyler here, if he tries to turn, I'll probably beat him to it. So his only way to keep his guard safe is to lay flat, bring his knees to his chest. And now we've got him flat here. So again, he's seated, we're hand flatting, we quickly make a sharp angle. And now we've forced him flat to his back. There's also another tricky way to do it, right? And that is typically some guys will adopt this posture. It won't always be square. So again, this is smart because when he's got a hand on the ground, it's gonna be harder for me to push Tyler, right? And it's also hard to get control over both legs. But we can do an inside ankle pick here. So we can reach and pick up this leg. So again, he's adopted this angular stance here, covering the hands. Look, if I push him, he's got a bit more stability here. So we cover that hand, reach through, and I pull that leg, and we get into his shoulders immediately. So again, 4 fun ways to get him down. Just make sure you keep in good posture. We push, we pick up both legs and pull, create a sharp angle, or we hit the one-handed ankle pick style pull. So again, just 4 fun ways to try to return them from seated to supine. One of the safest times to go for a knee cut is as our training partner, our opponent, returns from supine to seated. I say one of the safest. I don't say the only time to go for a knee cut. It's just, again, one of the safest ones. Because when our opponent is already supine and we're trying to force a knee cut stuff, I'm not saying it's not possible. Obviously, there's fantastic knee cut practitioners out there. Lucas Lepre, great example. Best, I would say, probably best knee cut in the world. Marcelo Garcia as well, fantastic knee cut. But in terms of modern day guards that can provide difficulty for it, would be reverse De La Riva. Again, reverse De La Riva, I would say, is a guard that was highly developed almost later on in the jiu-jitsu scene. And again, fantastic answer to the reverse De La Riva. Obviously, Miao's and stuff, they would enter reverse De La Riva off failed knee cuts. Again, just to put it in perspective, if Tyler's down, he's supine. When I come in for a knee cut, if Tyler can catch my foot and he can hook this inside foot around my leg, obviously that's very hard. I cannot get my knee to the ground, and that's really the problem, right? Prior to this point, when we approach a guard, if I can get that knee to the ground, obviously keep my feet to my butt, I can create knee cut opportunities. I can create knee cut opportunities out of headquarters. We can force one direction to pummel an underhook, and we can get him back to the other hip. But again, the purpose of the instructional isn't to do things that have already been taught, isn't to do things you see a lot of other people do. It's to find ways to keep it safe. Because again, a lot of guys know if I get here, again, like Leandro Lo in the gi, punch his gi to the floor, punch the collar to the floor, and he'd have a fantastic knee cut. But we want to approach this positions while mitigating risk. And I don't want to risk ending up in a reverse De La Rive. I don't want to give him headquarters to knee cut. No matter how good my knee cut is, I don't want to give him anything. So really, again, emphasizing our point, opportunity lies as Tyler returns from supine to seated. So if we pushed him down, Tyler's got me sit up. I can step in between, and he gives me that underhook, right? Because he cannot keep elbows and knees tight and get up. He needs some form of extension, usually both. And we have space for an underhook. And if we step inside, we can hit a good knee cut, right? So you can practice this as a drill. So if Tyler's seated, we come in, we can elevate the legs. We start to sense him coming back up. So we step in between, catch our underhook, turn our knee out. Some good details as well would be, obviously, we try to keep our heel to our butt and point our toes. Hugely beneficial detail is pointing your toes. Obviously, if I was doing a slow knee cut and I keep my ankle activated, that's a little bit of bite for him to bite onto. But if we point our toes, very hard for him to catch anything here. So for the purpose of the drill, pick up the legs, your training partner, you feel that down friction or that leg extension that's leading them to come up. Step inside, keep your hand next to your knee so we can win that underhook battle, right? So you guys can do it side to side here. So we lift those legs, we step inside, and we can slide through. Again, just a bit of fun. Obviously, it can be done off anything. If he's seated, I can push him, but that's really just guesswork that he's coming back up to seated. Whereas if I use the legs, and I can feel him coming back up, and it's a real good cue to start sliding through for the knee cut. So again, nothing too complicated here, nothing too detail orientated, but again, a safe way to hit the knee cut that still avoids us risking ending up in any sort of guard. It means that we can apply a knee cut pass without having to give them anything. And that's the whole purpose of the instructional, is give the bottom guy nothing. All right, we're gonna cover the body lock now. We're not gonna go crazy on it because there's a million body lock products out there, but obviously we have to mention it because it is super effective pass, but we should be able to cover it pretty detailed. We should be able to cover it in detail very quickly because I think there are just a few key battles that take place that you need to perfect those areas, and then obviously I'll allow it up to you. You can be as creative as you want. Once you know where the body lock is, you'll be able to find it, right? So we really need to just know the finishing sort of mechanics to get the body lock done. Body lock first sort of, I became aware of it with Jake Shields. When Jake Shields came to Renzo's, sort of body locking a lot of people, right? That's the first place I saw it. Obviously, I would say that he is probably the most effective out of early days. Obviously, it's been done a lot by a lot of high-level guys. It was unique. Now everyone's seen it. It's just a part of the game, right? It was an answer to people that are very good at butterfly guard. It was a great answer for people that pass on their knees. Obviously, it's a great position to capture it from. But again, for the purpose of this instructional, a great time to capture it would be as they return from supine to seated, because to the body lock, we need some space in these gaps here. And obviously to sit up, if you want to sit up aggressively, fast, you're going to reach with your arms as well as your legs. And again, the way we're passing, we're creating that urgency, that panic that makes them rush back to seated. But again, shout out to Jake Shields, you strong bastard, ruining. Obviously, I had a match with him, but he beat the shit out of me many times with this. And I've never met a 45-year-old vegan anywhere near as strong as that man. Talk about anti-aging. Let's talk about some key details here. So again, I don't want to cover this in too much detail because it has been sort of done to death. Not to say it's ineffective if you don't understand it. This is a good time to begin developing it. I keep an eye out for Nicky Rod's instruction. He's going to be doing a more comprehensive course on it. But yeah, let's cover some key details for me. When Tyler returns to seated, obviously we see these gaps here and we can shoot. Basically what I would consider it like is shooting a double leg sort of takedown, sort of hitting them back down. We want to take this sort of C grip here. This is my preference in terms of grip because it gives us the most distance with our grip. Again, this is a distant grip. We can go gable, we go wrist to wrist. But as we shorten our arms and as our training partners get bigger bellies, it can be harder to reach around, right? And for me personally, this grip's going to be most superior because we can really create good angles here. Palm to palm, sort of a tighter angle, less mobility. Wrist to wrist, even less mobility again. So when we lock it up, and obviously if I'm going to be passing to the left, we're going to have that short arm, long arm concept here because I'm going to need to use my arm and armpit to control this leg here. Let's just talk about the fundamentals for this thing here, right? A lot of people say your head has to be in the center to prevent your training partner sitting up because the time for me to secure the pass is when Tyler's flattened out here. I don't want Tyler sitting up on me here. This is where we're sort of in the danger zone here. It would be a bad idea for me to start thinking about stepping over here. We want them flat here. Obviously, we want their hooks stuffed. We don't want Tyler to be able to throw a closed guard in here because that's going to be horrible. And again, if we throw a closed guard in here, this is where those annoying fucking rubber guard guys, because we've got such low underhooks, can come into play, right? Be flexible for an old man. And we're in here, right? So, again, a lot of people say you need to have your head here. You don't. You just need to connect shoulder to ear, right? So if my head's off center and my shoulder here's relaxed and Tyler sits up, very easy for him to sit up. We come back. If I connect shoulder to ear, Tyler tries to sit up. Super strong. So just do a little experiment at home when you're practicing this, when you're drilling this, right? And that is, if my head's center, yeah, I can keep Tyler down, but I want to be closer to this leg. The closer I can bring my head to this leg, the more mobility and the closer my armpit is to his knee. So again, if there was a way that we could keep our head off center while preventing him sitting up, because again, if I'm relaxed, he sits up easy. If I put my head over his body, it can be kind of difficult to use this arm to get over the leg. So I like to keep my head off center, but as you can see, connect my shoulder to my ear. Tyler tries to sit up. So that's the ultimate goal with my upper body. So let's change angles to see what we can do with the lower half here. So I'm on butterfly hooks, right? If Tyler stays here, we're on butterfly hooks. While we're central, his ability to hit butterfly sumigation is pretty limited, right? But as my body crosses to one side and has to cross to one side, I can become vulnerable in that side because as weight comes off this foot, him having some extension between his butt will increase the power of his butterfly hook. So we need to figure out a way that we can shift our body weight while not being vulnerable to the butterfly swing, to the off balance. Again, if we're central, he's not off balancing me left or right. If we bring ourselves to Tyler's right, we're actually going to be vulnerable to our left unless we can kill one of these hooks. The way we're going to kill that hook is to change the angle of the knee. So we've got this body lock grip, everything's connected. Again, just to demonstrate, if I move across this way, see how Tyler's butterfly hook becomes strong, his left butterfly hook. He can off balance me here. Huge problem, right? So prior to coming across, we turn that knee in. Now we're going to be free to move into this direction while stuffing this butterfly hook. Foot's close to a butt, there's no power here. Foot's away from the butt, there's power. What do we want to do with our second leg? We don't want that on the ground because there's no driving pressure. We want to place our toes on the ground so we can push into it. I don't put my toes on the ground and relax my knee because Tyler can throw his leg around. That's an issue for us here. So we place our foot on the ground and we turn our knee in. Tyler tries to take it out. Difficult. I'm basically wedging his leg between my elbow and my knee here. If either of these are relaxed, the foot comes out. If my knees are relaxed and back here, it comes out. If my foot's on the ground, my knees pointed up, it can come out. So we're going to place it between our elbow and our knee here. So you can see I'm now able to create a slight angle in this direction and not be vulnerable to Tyler's left butterfly sweep or him retracting his right leg. And now here's a detail that a lot of people miss when they teach this technique. And it's the number one reason people have trouble stepping over this leg. it is quite often taught to just keep creating this angle so you can get over this leg. But it's really not the case that it's going to be that easy, right? Obviously, I want to emphasize getting it closer to this hip. But even here, very difficult for me to step over. The trick is to take a step back. So rather than forcing this leg over the top, because if I get frustrated and get too high, Tyler can off-balance me the other direction. So what we want to do is latch everything in, and I'm going to lean backwards. So look, Tyler's keeping his knee high. I can't step over. I take a seat backwards. Now Tyler tries to bring his knee to his chest. He can't do it. And I can place my knee over the top. So again, the two, for me, most important details, prevent the sit-up with shoulder to ear. And also, don't just cut an angle. Don't cut an angle and try to leap over the top. Take a step back, because as my armpit and elbow is over the knee, I can use my whole body weight to pull his knee back here. If I just try to use my elbow, there's no way my elbow is going to be stronger than that knee. But if we use our whole body weight to move backwards, now we can start to beat the knee. So again, we hit our shot, right? So Tyler tries to sit up. I dive in. We hit that long arm, short arm. I go shoulder to ear. Test it out here. Can they sit up? You can already hear that burrito's coming back up on him, right? I'm turning the knee inside the opposite direction to the pass. I keep my foot on the ground as a drive leg, and I turn my knee towards Tyler's knee. I keep my elbow and armpit tight to his knee. So test your stability here. Can Tyler sit up? Can he extend me? Can he sweep me? Let's start cutting a little more of an angle here. So now Tyler's keeping his knee tight. He's keeping his right knee tight to his chest here. We're struggling to step over. So what we do is we take that step back. Now Tyler tries to bring his knee forward. It's my entire body weight against his knee rather than just my elbow. Now I want to take a step over with my knee. Now the knee has replaced my left elbow here. Tyler's trying to move. And then we're easily able to switch from our right ear to the chest to the left ear. And you can see by this knee collapsing Tyler's butterfly hook here, it's also going to kill his secondary hook. Because if we look at this, right, the more we drag this knee in line, the straighter his spine is. And now, there's no way you're sweeping me this direction. A typical butterfly sweep, this foot is going to be close to the butt. He's going to plant the toes on the ground to give him the ability to elevate his hips and sweep me in this direction. So when we step over this leg, we want to absolutely ensure we kill this. As our weight not just comes to the left, but it comes forward, we drag this knee in line with his spine. So we have our butterfly hooks, so we have our body lock. We pull this back, and I want you to see how I step shallow here. If I step deep, Tyler can still place those toes on the ground, potentially off balancing. Exactly. If, when we step over the knee, I drag it in line with his spine, and I switch ears, Tyler tries to move here, he's completely thin. So for me, the whole purpose is taking his secondary leg in line with his spine. And then we don't have to even worry about clearing the butterfly hook. I can just back step off. But we don't want to take a big back step. We want to take a little one. The bigger back step I take, the easier it is for Tyler's foot to trap me. And we can get off balance there. So we want to take more of a folding back step. So Tyler keeps a sticky hook, and his second leg kills it. And then we can replace that left knee with the right, bring our knee to elbow, and we secure the pass. So for me, this is the most basic, most high percentage body lock class. Let's say he's seated, we push him down, he goes to come back up, we shoot the double, we connect our hands, long arm, short arm, shoulder to ear, that way our head can be closer to the leg while not jeopardizing his ability to sit up. We turn our knee in and we cut that angle. Tyler's keeping his right knee tight. It's hard for me to just step over. So I pull and step back. We take a shallow step over the knee. Again, if we take a deep step, Tyler's leg's still active. We want to take a shallow step. So look at this. Tyler's trying to move. We've got all the time in the world to step over the top and have that left leg replace the right. So again, some of the key principles here is, if we want to just break this down to a few steps: long arm, short arm, shoulder to ear, kill the butterfly hook, sink back to step over this leg. When we step over, step shallow and drag it in line with your spine. Now we can completely immobilize them and allow us to continue the pass. So I've emphasized that what's crucial is that we get them, once we secure the body lock, that we flatten them out. Again, it's crucial. If we try to step over prior to that point, super hard to keep our balance, super easy for them to survive the position, right? So let's see, rather than just persisting and forcing them flat. You know, I always find if something isn't working, the answer isn't just to do it harder and more aggressively. You know what I mean? Because then we're starting to fall into the trap that we're trying to get them to fall into. You know what I mean? It's like they're trying to establish a guard, we're dancing around it, and they're getting more and more frustrated trying to establish a guard. They get tired. They can lure us into the same trap. You know what I mean? It can happen when we're trying to outside pass, where if we think the only purpose of outside passing is to get that pass, when it's not happening, we start to get frustrated. We start to get emotional. We're like, oh man, Greg said 3 Toriandas would be passed. You know what I mean? Like if we get frustrated, then we start falling into their trap. Emotion is going to make us make poor decisions and going to get us tired. When we're on top, we should be making them tired. The same true from the body lock. If I get the body lock and I'm like, I have to flatten him out, and I'm just forcing it. And maybe Tyler's been doing 6-minute abs every day for years, 37 years exactly. And he keeps sitting up and we're having trouble forcing him down. The answer isn't just to bulldoze him more. The answer is that maybe he's doing something that's going to give us a secondary option. And that option is this variation I do when guys aren't going down. Typically, when I can't flatten them out, their hooks are extending us away, and we're having trouble coming forward because we can't get our legs close enough. Obviously, if we hit that double leg style entry super hard, we're throwing weight at him, we're going to get him down. If we enter in a more passive position, sometimes we secure the grip and then we're trying to force them down, it doesn't happen. Sometimes we hit them down and they bounce back up, right? So let's look at it from, face your head, this one. So again, I secured Tyler in the body lock here, and he's sort of halfway down, so he's sitting up into me, and I'm like, I just cannot get this guy down. And typically, if you can pay attention, it's hard to see this on camera, but if Tyler's really trying to keep his legs extended, if he's not allowing me to stop him, what happens is, I'm struggling to get in. But again, this is providing us another opportunity because he is extending his knees away from his chest. And like we emphasized with outside passing, he's vulnerable here. Anytime the arms reach, there's vulnerability. Anytime the legs reach, there's also vulnerability here. So we can actually misdirect his legs here. So if Tyler is extending here, I'm going to let go with my right hand, and I'm going to basically, it looks like I'm trying to grab, but I'm really just trying to hit these legs out of the way. And we can use his extension because he's basically balanced just on his butt to sort of steer him away here. So Tyler's extended his legs here. I take my arm back, I lift my hips, and I step my left leg out and back in. And we basically enter the side body lock. And obviously very easy to pull Tyler back down from a side body lock. Again, just a quick detail here. It's not just pulling. If I pull and Tyler resists, he's pretty stable here. I'm actually going to use my head. So I'm using my ear to his chest as well as a pull. But again, look at this from a few different angles, right? So we've secured our body lock, and I'm trying to flatten Tyler out, but Tyler's just too powerful. The mohawk is too top heavy, and I cannot send him down. So I feel that leg extension here. So I let go with my right arm, and I exaggerate hitting his legs. And I come up to my toes, and as I hit, my left leg flies in the air. We have to do that because it might get stuck here, and we're back to square one. So as we lift our legs, I lift that left leg. We come in, we secure the side body lock, we grab his upper body, and we use our head to start pulling them down here. So again, we'll keep looking at this, guys. But this is, I can't emphasize how simple yet highly effective it is, because they recognize, shit, one of the battles is I have to be flat. I'm going to do everything I can to avoid being flattened out. That might be extending the legs. So we've come in here, he starts extending away. I give him a bit of resistance, I make him think, and then when I feel that last extension, we hit the legs, we lift our left leg, the opposite leg to the leg push, and we step our knee in straight away. And again, I'm not going to go too crazy about what we can do, but we can go Khabib style, we can reach this wrist, we can grab the shoulder and use our hand to bring them down. But again, high percentage technique when they're trying to extend their legs away from you. All right, let's look at another variation, something else we can mix into the body lock. A lot of the body lock passing out there is pretty standard, very much a linear progression of stepping over the legs. Let's look at another one where we can grip the leg and turn it into a different pass, right? So when we have the body lock here, we get that long arm, short arm. The beauty of the long arm, short arm is I can at any point just transfer to a deep hip grip, right? So sometimes when I'm here and I'm sort of feeling a bit unstable in this position, say I'm dealing with someone with extremely long, extremely good flexibility, I'll let go of long arm, short arm and grab the body here with the underarm. And if you see the little pass off I did, it can be difficult to just grab the hip. So I take a pit stop where I frame against the hip to get my hand deeper here. And I reach my left hand back to secure the butterfly hook. We're free to do this because obviously his left butterfly hook strapped. If we were too loose here and I did this, he might shoot a triangle. But if we emphasize bending our knee in, stuffing it, triangle risk, very, very minimal, right? So we're in our position here, we've done the pass off. I grab the ankle and I hang on to it here. I still am driving forward, keeping shoulder to ear connection. Tyler's trying to move here. I can easily push his ankle and start bringing my shoulders over the legs here. And we can use that to secure a pass. So basically end up in kind of a side body lock here. So again, let's look at these grips. Long arm, short arm. We've got them flattened out. Maybe just want to go for a different angle here. Maybe we're sick of this same old battle. Maybe we're having trouble stepping over the leg. I'm going to do a pass off, a frame on the hip, secure a single hand grip here. We're going to reach back and grab that butterfly hook. I grab it at the ankle and I stuff it. As I start to walk, I push his foot out. So we get a bit of external rotation there. A very weak angle here. Tyler's trying to resist it. We can keep our shoulder heavy. Tyler's trying to move, trying to find new angles here. And we can easily walk over the inside butterfly hook and start coming back for a pass here. So just a way, something we can throw in to sort of keep them guessing here, right? No matter how good a technique is, if we keep doing the same thing from the same positions over and over again, even a really bad grappler is going to start picking on to some little battles where they can hold you up, potentially start turning the tide. So if we can add new things in to old positions to keep them guessing and keep it unpredictable, right? So we're in a body lock, we open the hands, we grab the foot, we start passing in the opposite direction, something else for them to think about. So now, if we start setting up another body lock, they have to worry about us going in both directions. And in turn, we're more likely to get option A, the old school option, as long as we throw in some different things to keep them guessing. There is a concept in wrestling called a Turk. And a Turk is a method to prevent people from heisting and bailing out. Obviously, it has its purpose within the sport of wrestling, but obviously, like most things in modern day jiu-jitsu, we can steal it and we can pretend it's our own move, right? So there's a way we can use the Turk style movement from a body lock in a couple of different ways. But just for perspective, so you know what I'm talking about. If I have Tyler in a half guard, you'll see a lot of MMA fighters do this as well. When they take a guy down, they'll back heel and they'll hip in here. So I create kind of a wedge in Tyler's leg. That obviously makes it hard for Tyler to put his toes on the ground. Easy for me to keep my weight on top. It's not necessarily the greatest idea because it does leave you like because my inside knee's on the ground, it does leave me susceptible to those John Wayne knee leather style movements, right? But there obviously is a time and a place for this. If you secure a takedown and your guys try to freak out, get out of that, it's a great way for us to keep him in. We can use this from the body lock pass in two different ways. First one is when we're trying to capture this leg and they're keeping their knee high. Obviously, it's going to be difficult to step over. I still believe if you do the lean back technique I was showing in the sort of body lock section, we should always be able to step over if done correctly. But like obviously, sometimes we might be dealing with a freak with long legs and we just can't quite get it. So this would be another way you could capture this leg. So within the body lock, I'm trying to step over. It's difficult here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hook that butterfly leg, right? So if Tyler's keeping it tight here, again, we can't step over. So I'm gonna pivot and catch it with my ankle. And then we're gonna do that exact turkey motion here. So now we've wedged it and Tyler's trying to keep that leg high. And it's gonna be easy for us to step over here. So we're in our body lock position and we're having trouble stepping over. So again, basically the technique's entirely the same sequence, right? We still got this knee rotated internally, but what we're gonna do to capture this leg is just pivot our foot underneath their Achilles here. Once we're underneath their Achilles, I'm gonna keep my ankle activated. I'm gonna back heel and I'm gonna capture and extend it here. So really, again, just like we did in the Turk from half guard, it's hard for Tyler to retract that knee. So it's acting in entirely the same way. And we're able to get our knee over the top. And obviously here, we can definitely set up our half guard and consolidate the pass. There's also another way we can use the Turk from this position. And it's going to be built upon a method to hook this leg as we're passing. What it's going to do is going to turn Tyler's hips away from me here. So this will be another one of those unique positions that isn't a point scoring position, but is a great control position. It's also a panic inducing position for the bottom guy, because obviously anytime there's sort of a little bit of tension on the knee, you do start to get worried and you want to get out of the situation. Obviously, if you cannot force yourself out of the situation, your sort of stress levels are going to heighten. You're probably going to be more likely to hit explosive movements. And it's, again, another one of those ways that we, as the passer, can cook them. So again, the concept of just cooking your opponent to get a submission to get isn't new. A lot of people talk about it from mount or from back. You know what I mean? Like we're going to wear them down a bit before we try to go for submission. Especially true from mount. A lot of mount submissions, you can completely lose position. So it's better to fatigue them. We're just following the same principles for passing. Again, using these unique style control positions that aren't point scoring positions. But I just want you to remember throughout, and when you're training, when you're rolling, you can find ways to trap people that aren't necessarily point scoring positions, but they result in your opponent being tired. That is a great thing, and you can be as creative as you want with that to try and develop new ways to control the bottom guy. We don't have to stay within the framework of traditional scoring positions, right? So let's take a look at how we could do it. And these two Turk techniques actually fit together. So I'm hooking Tyler's ankle here. So we're trying to step over, we can't get it. We hook it, we step over. What I'm gonna do from this point, and this is where it's gonna get pretty tricky, right? It's gonna be very specific movements to be able to get this to work, right? So this is a particular technique that's gonna take a lot of drilling and a lot of finesse, right? So when we do step over the knee, I want you to still, in good habit, switch right ear to left ear. Obviously, we're doing this to prevent Tyler pushing on my face and keeping me in this direction. So we do want to turn. And then if you pay close attention to both of my feet, I'm going to start to force Tyler's leg straight. And the way I'm going to do that is I keep that back heel and I turn my knee inside it. What we can now do is with that back heel, I replace it to my foot. Back heel is sort of limited in the range of motion. I can only really back heel in one direction. If we now switch to place our foot on top, I can really start to bend his knee. And Tyler, he isn't going to resist it, right? Because he's going to feel knee bar style tension. And the only way he's going to be able to relieve that is to start turning away from it. Once he turns away, I switch legs. So now we start back heeling with the left leg. And we've created a good wedge on Tyler's hip here. Tyler's trying to wiggle around here. Very difficult. You might even feel his knee is in jeopardy at this point. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open my hands, climb my hands up to a shallow near side underhook. My right hand, the long arm part of the body lock, is going to come out, and we're going to post that hand on the ground here. So the way I'm turking exactly the same way, but it's kind of like a reverse turk here. I'm back heeling and hipping in. Tyler's trying to move here. We can start to hop that leg over the top here. So again, another position, complete control, not a point scoring position. It's kind of reminiscent of that sort of dope mount position we were talking about in the non-scoring control positions. So again, you see I've got this near side underhook. I can pin Tyler here. I've got complete balance. Tyler's freaking out trying to attack. Very, very difficult here. Then we could step through and start progressing to mount. But again, if you really want to make this guy suffer, there are some other things we could do here. We could place our knee underneath and start shelving this leg. So if Tyler's trying to move here, very, very difficult for him to move. So again, the initial turk, we were using the inside leg to capture this leg and step over, or in a traditional wrestling sense, we were hooking it, basically extending it with our hips here to just keep him flattened out, prevent him getting up, prevent him bellying out. What we're doing with this sequence is we're using our outside leg to catch basically a reverse turk, and it's applying this straight knee bar pressure to Tyler's leg. Tyler can either eat that, be brave, or he can sort of go with that pressure and turn to find relief. Obviously, if he turns to find relief, he probably knows he's going to be put in a very, very bad position, but really, what choice does he have? This is basically one of those forced errors. He basically has to take the break, tap, or relieve the pressure in the only direction I'm allowing him to do it. And the reason we can force that pressure is because the knee that steps over over his knee eventually just shelves underneath here. And then we use our secondary foot, so we've got control over both points to start turning him, encouraging him to turn in this direction through, obviously, if he keeps his legs straight here, you can see how that's going to be like lateral knee bar pressure. So again, let's keep looking at a few different angles of this. We're in that body lock. We capture the turk. I step over. So again, pay close attention to these angle changes here. My left knee is going to drive under his knee, and my right foot is going to back heel. And obviously, we're still going to keep with good principles and switch right ear on the belly to left ear. So I lift my hip slightly, and I bring my knee underneath Tyler's knee. Tyler's still immobilized here. This is still a great pinning position. I'm going to remove the right foot as a back heel and place it onto his leg and do the pass off. So we've got the knee shelf. We pass off, and I place it above the other Achilles, and immediately capture it here. When we get that hip in pressure, we start taking this near side underhook. We rip our hand down and we post it on the ground for an extra base of support here. So again, in your training partner start wiggling around, we're going to feel that this is very difficult. And I want you to pay attention to how I hop my left leg over Tyler's left leg. So it's inside Tyler's leg right now. I'm kicking in, keeping tension at all times. And now we're in that pinning control position again, where it's basically that dope mount style pass, where I can pick up the tricep, step into mount, or again, just for the sake of punishing Tyler a little more, we can. When we're in this control position, I can actually place my right knee under as well. So we've got that sort of mobility where Tyler's legs are split. One of the best ways to pin and control a bottom guy is to split his legs. You can see here, Tyler cannot force me to pass. He cannot force a turtle. Nothing he does to explode is going to help him here. Basically, a waiting game to see where I go next. We hit the turk, we sit back. We take our knee over the top. and we switch we switch right ear to left ear. This knee's gonna guide under his knee, and I'm gonna back heel with my other leg. I'm facing the left completely. Now my whole body begins to face the right. We've now trapped that leg. I can slide off and take the base of my foot to bend his knee here. Again, if Tyler, come back and say, if Tyler tries to resist this, it applies knee bar pressure. So you see he wants to turn with it, and we do the pass off the back heel with the other leg. We climb up with that near side underhook, post our hand on the ground. I don't relax my hips here, I keep a tension. Always applying that turking pressure. And we start to hop over. And again, another great position to apply pressure to them in such a way that they cannot force any relief whatsoever here. So guys, that's a great solution that is built upon two variations of the Turk. I would call it a Turk and a reverse Turk. And it ultimately builds into those principles of taking positions that a lot of people largely ignore because they're not point scoring positions. But we're going to use them because it builds with the concept of this entire instruction. We're going to put them in unfamiliar territory where they want to explode out, where they're panicking, where they're stressing. And that's really, again, the way we're going to fatigue good people, potentially better people, potentially guards that we'd never pass. So really, I want you to keep your mind open and don't just think of we have to enter a guard to pass it, and then the definition of the best passing positions are going to be those point scoring positions. We want those pit stops along the way that are unfamiliar, stressful, cause explosions, that fatigue them, so that ultimately by the time we pass, they're really ready to quit at that point. And this will be a great example. You can already hear Tyler's breath, how uncomfortable those positions are.